What's up, guys? I'm Jake McGee. I'm here at the Prime Sports Midwest Bat Demo Day right here, proud sponsor of Youth Baseball Midwest.
All right, hold on just a second. Okay. Tell the folks your name
I'm Walker Wexler.
and what team do you play for.
Southern Illinois Blue Jays.
So tell us what bat are you swinging and what do you like about it?
The Victus pencil bats.
It's a Victus pencil bat, and what do you like about it?
I like the colors and the barrel.
I love it. Thank you, Walker.
Give me a good one.
Give me a good one.
Definitely a different type of process.
Cut down or freeze up.
Being a coach's son. Jackson, of course, they keep you one still is a hit by pitch. Oh my. Hello everyone, welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for this edition of YBMcast Baseball Talk, powered by Game 7 Baseball, game7baseball.com. We're looking forward to another great season with our fantastic partners, our friends at Game 7 Baseball. Dave Penning, Dave Schmidt do a fantastic job. The schedule's up. Our Super Series is up. And I'm going to fill you in on a couple things there here just a moment. But go to the website, game7baseball.com. If you're looking at your schedule, go check it out. Tournaments across from Tennessee all the way down to Ballparks of America. It's a new one over in Boonville, Ballpark Central. A new park over in the central part of the state, which I think is cool. Max Creek happening. They got their fields, and they got the new turf fields, the big boy fields out there now at Max Creek Ballparks National. So a lot of great stuff happening. Go check it out, game7baseball.com. Folks, we appreciate you being here. If you like what we're doing, take a moment, subscribe. Support the channel. We appreciate it. Hit the like button, share it out with your friends. If you do a bunch of stuff on social media, follow us on X at YBM_cast. You can follow us on IG, that is Instagram, and Facebook at Youth Baseball Midwest. So we appreciate it greatly. Today on the Prime Sports Call Link, our good friend, our one of our fantastic contributors to our Youth Baseball Midwest group of coaches is Scott McGee, the head coach at Willard High School. Coach, how you doing?
Doing great. It's been some 70-degree days here in mid-November. As a baseball person, you can't complain about that. My wife's a big Christmas person. She's ready for it to get cold, but I'm loving this 70 degrees every day.
I'm with you. You can have all my snow. You can take that. I want the warmth. Let's play baseball all year round. I'm hip.
Absolutely.
Folks, Prime Sports, remember our sponsors for our call link. If you want to become a member, we've got our YBM club now. Our legacy membership is out there. We got a special rate. The first 100 club members come on, you get 50% off. Come on down. You get 10% off in-store purchases at 3 locations, Fenton, Chesterfield, St. Peter's. Please check us out. Become a legacy member. Help support what we're doing here at Youth Baseball Midwest. We get to go down and see guys like this, live stream some ball games. We want to get down into the Southwest a lot more. And everything that this membership is about with the YBM Club is about us promoting youth baseball, high school baseball, not only in the state of Missouri, but around the Midwest. So we appreciate it. And also great discounts from our Prime Sports partners, 10% off in store. So make sure you check that out. I got a trivia question for you to kick off here, Scott. I want to see what, if you, it's an oldie right here.
Okay.
But what was the original name of the St. Louis Cardinals?
So let's see here. The Browns became the Orioles. St. Louis Cardinals. I guess I don't know that one.
Yeah. We're going to keep that for you.
Okay.
We're going to keep that.
Good.
We've got we'll give some clues at the end of this, but
okay.
I thought it was a good question. That
is a good question.
Back. That goes way back.
It definitely does. Yeah.
We got Coach on here. We've been talking about these things, and one of the things about Youth Baseball Midwest is we want to have conversations about these things, help parents understand what's going on, whatnot. And, sometimes it's hard to watch these kind of or listen to, but these are the conversations. It's easy to do the fluff. Everybody loves the 90 mile an hour heater and watching that and the kid hitting 100 miles an hour off the bat. Those are all fantastic. I call them fluff, but you need some fluff. You got to sell yourself. It's okay. But this is the meat and potatoes here. This isn't dessert. And sometimes you got to have, as they say, you got to eat your meats and vegetables before you can have dessert, right? So we want to talk a little bit. We had a great conversation through this over the last couple of weeks with our other contributors. And I wanted to bring Coach McGee because he does a fantastic job with his youth program down there at Willard. Coach, we talk about trusting the process, but I don't know sometimes if we really know what the process is. Would you agree?
Totally agree. I think there's two ways to understand that. Number one is that you're already on the right track, and there's a lot of times you're not. Or sometimes you hear the trust the process, and it makes you not really push yourself that much right now because eventually it's going to all work out. And I think both things can be pretty limiting. So while I like that term and it definitely has its place, I do think some people have misinterpreted what it means. Yeah.
I would agree with that very much because, and then, I thought it was interesting, Coach Josenberger brought up the fact that he thought everybody's process is a little bit different. And I think that's very true because not every player is the same.
You're exactly right. I think that one of the hard parts, especially if we're talking about baseball, boys sports, is from ages 12 through 15, there's so much physical development that happens, but you don't know when it's going to happen in that time period. You could even say to 16. And so, my son's an example of this. On the first day of spring baseball, his freshman year, he was 5'5", 130. It's pretty tough to say that that profiles as a college baseball player because you're 5'5", 130. And then, you grow 7 inches and you gain 50 pounds and all of a sudden things start to change. Mm-hmm. There's also the kid who grows his 7 inches and gains his 50 pounds when he's 12. And he immediately thinks, I'm getting drafted. And they end up not pushing themselves on the skill development part because they can survive off athleticism at that age. And so I think both things can be pretty limiting. And it makes it really difficult. That age, I'm not saying that nothing matters before the age of 12, but ages 12 through 15 is where a lot of people make mistakes in youth baseball. Those are the ages that I think we're not doing a great job as at developing here in America in those ages right there.
One of the things that I think is fascinating, and we've seen a lot of the rule changes, and we talked a little bit about that before we came on, but one of the things that I thought was fascinating, and I go back to my own experience, with my son and whatnot, and and guilty, you sometimes you look back and you go, wow, the youth baseball scene has been focused on college recruiting. And I'm not talking about 15 through 18. I'm talking about 8 through 14. That, all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, wait a minute. I've seen some of these programs where kids in the state of Missouri, where kids that are committed to play college baseball have been cut from their high school team. Now, this is few and far between, but some of these programs are just so many talented kids and things like that. It's happened. We've got to get back, I think, to this thought process. And, one of the reasons why I love this subject with you is you have a youth program, you're very invested. How do we get back to talking about kids 8 to 14 about, what are you doing to make your high school team?
Yeah. And I think not just that, but what are you doing to have fun and get better at where you are right now? There's too many times where we're saying, oh, we have to do this due to this other thing that's going to matter 10 years from now. And I'm not saying that none of it matters,
Sure.
but if you're having to cancel all your family vacations to go to a 9U tournament in Indianapolis, I don't think that's a good idea, a good use of your time. So there's times when that stuff is going to matter, but I think that getting focused on, and no offense to guys who get cut from their high school program, and there's high school programs that are legitimately cutting guys who can play at a certain level of college.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't be successful in high school baseball, I don't know how you're going to be a successful college player. With some real caveats, I understand that. I mean, there's guys that are the number 6 pitcher at some Class 6 schools that would be the number 1 at our school or whatever, or a Class 5 school. Maybe not this year. Levi Hilton's pretty good, but you know what I'm saying. And so
Yes.
I think that the focus needs to be, how prepared am I for the next level? And if you're 13, the next level is freshman high school baseball. How prepared am I to play freshman high school baseball? And you have a lot of people that think they're really prepared, and they've never even visited that level of game. You have high school kids that are 17 years old that say, I think I'm a Division I player. And how many times have they watched Mizzou or SEMO or Missouri State or SLU? Like, go and watch them, like actually watch the guys you're going to be competing against. And I think it'll be pretty obvious that maybe you're not at that level. And so I think it's difficult sometimes that we look so far into the future, but we need to honestly be able to evaluate where we stand right now and what we have to do to get ready for that next level. And the next level is really just that next age group that we have to be better at, because there's a huge funnel. We had our kindergarten tryouts in early November. We had 41 kids come out for kindergarten baseball. And I know there's a few who don't play with our organization, with Willard Youth Baseball. So you can figure 50 kindergartners. Well, how many of those kids will still be around as seniors? It's easy just to compare yourself to the other 50 in your grade, but every level, kids drop off. And you've got to make sure that you're getting better for that next level to be prepared. And different skills matter at each age group as well. There's a huge jump between a 12U baseball and 14U baseball is a huge gap. So what are you doing to prepare yourself? Then 14U to JV baseball is a huge gap. So we lose a lot of kids in those age groups. So what are you doing to prepare yourself for that is important.
I think it's interesting you say, and I've said this quite a few times over the past, I don't know, month or so, but the university in Missouri that had the most draft picks this year was UCM, the Division II program. And
so,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, UCM is a great program. Coach Crooks does a great job. Coach Backus, their assistant, does a great job. We have a player there right now. And if I could say something about youth baseball development, it would be to highlight that kid. So kid's name is Chris Massey, left-handed pitcher. He threw in the national title game against Tampa. He's going to move into the starting rotation this year. He'll be a junior at UCM. He hit 94 last year in season. He's touched 96 already this fall. As an 8th grader, he threw 66 miles an hour. His freshman year was COVID, and so we did not have a spring. But if we would have, he would not have been the number 1 pitcher on his freshman baseball team. And part of this, I feel like we had a hand in development. 99% of it is his work ethic. Yeah. But we always took a long-term view for him. In 8th grade, he threw 14 innings, and he walked 41 batters. He was not ready to pitch. And so we just made sure we threw him about as often as we could. And we said when he walks 3 guys in an inning, we pull him. And it gave him some mound reps that year. By his sophomore year, he got down to where he could walk 1 batter per inning. By his junior year, he was pretty good. By his senior year, he was dominant. He was a really good pitcher as a high school senior. And he's had that same development mindset at UCM. he has just consistently tried to get better every year to prepare himself for the next level. When he was an eighth grader, he was not thinking about pitching in the D2 national title game because that was so far away from where he currently was. He was, how can I throw enough strikes so I can make the rotation as a sophomore on the JV team? And then once he did that, okay, how can I be a top 3 varsity arm as a junior? He wasn't thinking too far out in front. And I think that's something that we did. UCM is an outstanding program. It's why when we talk about levels, the D1, D2, whatever, I mean, look at the attendance that UCM gets and look at the attendance that a lot of Division I schools in this state draw and tell me which one's a bigger time baseball. And I think it'll be pretty obvious that UCM's bigger time baseball than maybe some other places.
I love what you just said there. And the discipline it takes as a head coach to set aside, and I don't think I maybe I don't even shouldn't even use that setting aside, but it's not about setting aside, but just the discipline it takes to understand how to help this young man get better. And you might wear an inning because he walked 3 guys, and you might it might end up a winning run out of that, even if you've pulled him after 3 walks. What kind of fortitude does that take, Coach? Because a lot of times, we're competitive. Everybody's competitive. But how do you set yourself in that position mentally as a coach?
I think the number one thing is we have to understand that most youth baseball games don't matter in the standpoint of if you're playing in a league, that league, the standings don't really matter. So you can use all of your league games to develop kids like we're talking about. Mm-hmm. You can get your pudgy third baseman. You can get him a bunch of reps at shortstop because he's skilled enough and you know that he might develop some athleticism. You can do that on the league nights. Most tournaments, when we're talking about USSSA or whatever, you play 2 pool play games between Friday and Saturday. Bracket play starts Sunday. So your pool play games, all they matter for is the seeding. So we can try some things on those days. Then I will say on Sunday when it comes time to bracket play, let's go win. Let's not throw that kid on Sunday where he feels like he lost it for his entire team. And I think that takes some conversations with the parents. I think it takes some conversations with the players. I think it also, when we talk about trusting the process, understanding that how many of your 12U baseball games will you remember when you're 18? And so, does this game really matters today? We should try everything we can to win it, but we need to have a long-term vision in mind. And if I'm coaching a youth baseball team and we play the same kid at shortstop every game all year, are we really preparing that kid or the kids around him to play the next level of baseball? And I don't know that we are. And so it takes some things there. Now, when you get to bracket play, if you've got a great shortstop, put him out there for all 3 games on Sunday. No problem at all. Mm-hmm. But then I would say in practices, in league play, in pool play games, I would be getting other kids half the reps at that position to make sure that you don't need to play 11 kids at shortstop, but I think you can play 3 or 4. You don't need to catch 11 kids, but you need to catch 3 or 4. And developing some pitching. Like if they're a left-handed kid, you're really doing a disservice if you're not pitching them quite a bit in youth baseball, because everybody needs left-handed pitchers in high school. Every college, I mean, you go look at an SEC roster, if they've got 20 pitchers, 10 are lefties. And so are we really doing that in youth baseball? I don't know that we are. Those are things we really need to get better at as a youth baseball community.
The process, and I think those are things, we always talk about the development and this and that, but that's usually only in the cage or, in the winter time or whatnot. I love the fact that you've brought this into the season, into gameplay and whatnot, because it's something we talk about very little in this respect. And what does that take? When you start looking at these kids and you're saying, okay, where am I going to play? I'm going to find, 3 or 4 kids that I want to look at. What traits are you looking for in that development in the process that would play a shortstop or a center field or a catcher?
Yeah, I think number one is if you're going to play shortstop, you're going to have to be skilled. The great athlete without much skill gets moved to a new position by the time they're in high school. In youth baseball, that kid can still be a really good shortstop. So I think, number one, looking for your skilled kids who also have throwing accuracy. That throw, when you jump to a 60-90 field and the shortstop's got to go 2 steps to his right. I mean, of our program of 50 kids, I probably have 22 who can field the ball 2 steps to their right and do the footwork. But I've got about 3 who can complete that throw consistently. And so the guys who have some accuracy throwing, the guys who are skilled, you need to be playing them at shortstop because that's going to be your guys. Same thing with a catcher. I've got to have throwing accuracy. I don't care as much about your throwing velocity, but you've got to be an accurate thrower, and it's got to be somebody who has some leadership-like qualities that you can put back there. So I think those are guys that maybe when you are looking at your 11-year-old team, those are the guys you need to keep looking at. Now, that doesn't mean that we have had kids that were the best athlete on the team with average skill level. They were no doubt the best shortstop as an 11-year-old. But if we only play them at shortstop, and I think those kids a lot of times end up in center field, then we're doing that kid a disservice by never playing him in center field, and we're doing that entire group a disservice by not developing other shortstops. And so I think that's kind of how you have to look at it. Like one of the things I tell guys who are coaching ages 12, 13, and 14, if that kid that you're talking about wasn't the best athlete on the field, would they still be a good player? And because eventually there will be somebody who's as good or better of an athlete than you. And so a lot of times we can say, man, that 13-year-old's a great athlete. They're already touching the rim when they jump. They're scoring 5 touchdowns a football game. They throw at 74, but are they really a skilled player? We need to develop that kid's skill, and we need to also not just pigeonhole that kid into this one spot because that's where he fits best right now. And so I think it does take some real conversations. I think it involves some outside perspectives. You start to involve dads in the process that are coaching the team. Like there's a lot of moving parts to all of this. But I do think that we need to be thinking about what does this kid look like when he's 17 years old? And we need to have that lens sometimes when we're viewing the 12 through 15 age groups.
I think the hardest thing for us is to have honest conversations. And I know I've probably been on the side of it. And I think at some point, all parents have been on this point where maybe we're not looking at things in the proper perspective. It's our kids. And backing up and really listening and paying attention. How do you, and I know you're a high school coach, and I think people maybe look at that and go, well, he knows, but how does a dad coach on a team who's been working with you and whatnot, how do they have that conversation with parents? What's it's got to be a difficult thing, and I'm sure it doesn't always just go peachy rosy. What are things that you've had that success with, Coach?
I think, like you just said, having honest conversations and being upfront. And those need to happen when a season ends so that if that conversation does not go the way you want to, that family can choose to go play somewhere else for the next year. This is the beautiful thing. Don't be miserable in your youth baseball experience, right? There's teams that just aren't the right fit. There's coaches that aren't the right fit. Doesn't mean they're bad. Don't be miserable. And if this season is, so let's say I've got a team, and let's say my third best shortstop really wants to be the shortstop, and I don't project them to be the shortstop the next year. I will want to have a conversation with that family, and I'm talking about in August or July, not the next February, but July or August, and say, hey, I still profile them as our third best shortstop. They will continue to get practice reps there. They'll play one league night a week at shortstop, but the majority of their important innings are going to come at other positions because, and you lay out the reasons why. Now, they can disagree with that and say, I still want them to be on this team. They're going to work really hard in the offseason. And as a coach, you do have to be open-minded. But it also gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I can go play shortstop on this other team. This other team wants me. Well, if that position is important enough to you that you need to play that position as a 12-year-old, no hard feelings, go do that other thing. Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I tell people in youth baseball, if you're happy with your current environment, do not switch to please somebody else. We have kids in our program. We have a youth baseball program. I have players that don't play in our youth baseball program, and I get questions sometimes like, hey, they're going to be in 7th grade. Do they need to come over and join your program so they're ready for high school? Like, no. If they're enjoying what they're doing, if you think they're getting better at baseball, don't leave to try to please me. I mean, ultimately, I would love to have 9 guys show up as Division I players as freshmen. So if you think they're getting better with what they're doing, do not switch that for us. But if you're not real happy with the way your current team is going, there's nothing wrong with trying something else. I will say if you're bouncing teams every single year, maybe you're maybe you have your priorities wrong as the parent. So I think that's a little bit worrisome. Not from even from a development standpoint, but maybe from is this truly what our family is meant to do? Because it seems to be making us all unhappy every single year. I think that's something that you need to maybe look at. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that 11-year-old changing teams when they're 12. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all if they don't think the opportunities are there for them.
I agree. And one of the things you said there, I think that's a big part of it. For instance, even if you're getting personalized instruction, okay, and you have a family, that you have an instructor that is working with you hitting wise, pitching, fielding, catching, whatever the case may be. The word trust in the process is, I think, the word that we have to have the most understanding of. Who do you trust? And who are you trusting with your 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old son? And Mitch and I had this conversation on his show, on the Hitting Zone podcast last night. And that's one of the things that, to me, we have core values with Youth Baseball Midwest. We talk about, accountability. We talk about perspective, and people think, well, yeah, these are real things even with us in these conversations. If we're just going out and talking about somebody hitting home runs and this, that, well, wait a minute. There's a lot more to youth baseball than just going out and winning games. This part of it, this conversation, as you said, you have to have the honest conversations. So when you're talking about trust, I don't know that we work hard to see, how does my son relate to this person? Can this person relate to my son, to be able for him to have success in this instructional piece? If you've got a kid that doesn't understand a word and can't relate to what this instructor is giving him, it's of no value to anybody. Right?
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And it's funny because we have some good instructors in our area, and we have some kids, a kid will go to him and say, oh, that guy was terrible. And we'll have another kid that's the same age that loves him. And I think it's why it's too hard for us to sit here and judge and say, like, oh, that guy doesn't do a good job. There's certain kids that connect with different people. I'm fortunate as the high school head coach that I can surround myself with assistants that have different personalities than myself. So out of our 50 players, maybe there's 20 who don't really care for me all that much. Hopefully I've surrounded myself with assistants that can relate to that kid. And I think the same thing when you're starting to go into, if I've got a 10-year-old that wants to take some hitting lessons with somebody, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying out 2 or 3 different guys and finding out what is the best fit for this. It doesn't, I don't think it matters how many college guys that guy's developed, because the kid's 10. I don't need to be thinking about college baseball, back to our earlier point. Yeah. I need to think about, is my kid getting good enough to play 12U baseball? That's what my next step is. And there's a lot of things that go into that. And then, like you said, who's mentoring your children, that matters as much as anything. I mean, there's a lot of 10-year-olds with bad swings that end up being 14-year-olds with good swings with no instruction, due to physical development, due to the kid getting really into hitting. There's a lot of things, but who's mentoring that kid? And so I think there's nothing wrong with kind of shopping around a little bit and finding out what works out best for you. And we're living in the information age. I mean, if you want to help your 10-year-old hit, then you can get on YouTube and you can find a bunch of stuff and try it out. So there's a lot of ways to do it. So, be thinking about who you're kind of putting your kids around and who can find a connection with your son. I've got a nephew who's a freshman who started taking private lessons in pitching, and it's made a world of difference for him in just the last 2 months. I mean, he's getting way better, and it's just because he's found a connection here that really works for him. And I think that stuff's important.
I think, when you're talking about the language of baseball and whatnot, there's guys that use language over here that is different than this instructor over here. And what I mean by language is, we may be trying to do the same things, but how this coach expresses it is much different than this guy over here. You may have somebody who's really like animated and will get after you and whatnot, and then there's a coach over here that instructors just laid back and said, well, this is the way if we want to do this. One of the things that I find interesting, and I think this is a big part of this when you're talking about these questions, and you said it, you're looking at an 8, 9, and 10-year-old, and the physicality of an 8, 9, 10-year-old, it is what it is. And you'll see some kids that just have movement and this, that, whatnot. And there's kids that understand how their body moves much better, even if they can't explain to you what that means. They know it. They feel it. They swing better. They understand it. You'll see a kid at 10U, take his hands and kind of just start doing, a pre-swing, and you're like, he feels that. And I think that's the toughest thing is really getting a player, any player. And when you're talking about youth baseball, how do you get a 10-year-old to understand, to feel how his body is moving, to correct something? And I think this is, and I think this gets frustrating sometimes for parents. We talk about, and we go, he's not getting better. Well, maybe he just hasn't quite got to that point where his physical ability is not there to really understand how his body moves.
I think you're exactly right. And this is actually probably an area where I wish I could go back and do a couple things over. I feel like I know a decent amount about hitting, and I can teach the mechanics of it. And, so when my son's growing up and he's 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm kind of talking mechanics with him a little bit. He's always been a really smart young man, so we can kind of discuss those things. I'm listening to Matt Holliday talk about the development he went through with all of his sons. And what they basically did was they just spent different days trying to emulate different major league hitters' swings and say, okay, today you're going to try to hit like Manny Ramirez. And they'd pull up some video of Manny Ramirez, and then the kid would try to emulate that, and then would be able to talk and give feedback. And so that they could kind of try to explain some things and get some feels for themselves and use some of their own terminology. And I think that would be a better way to do it. Obviously, you've also got Matt Holliday, who's a great hitting coach right there with them. But I do think that maybe that is something you can get as technical as you want, but if the kid can't feel what they're doing, to your point earlier, I don't know that we're doing them a real favor there. And so trying to emulate some other patterns, I think does something for their development when they're in that age group. And I think that's probably better than maybe getting lessons with your 8, 9, or 10-year-old. Just to be honest with you. Yeah.
I love that because you're trying to get them to understand how their body's moving. And if you're taking different swing patterns, you have to understand that. And getting them to think through that process rather than telling them something. That's fascinating. I hadn't heard that. I love that.
You look like Manny Ramirez hit with a split grip sometimes, no, you don't see anybody hardly hit with a split grip. So there's a reason he was doing it, and it's because he got a feel for that. And so I think that making an 8-year-old do that for 3 or 4 hitting sessions so they can explain what that feels like, and then they can go back to the way they've been doing it. And I think that stuff is pretty beneficial. We try to do the same thing in pitching. Emulate, you go back, watch Satchel Paige pitch, watch Bob Gibson pitch, watch Greg Maddux pitch, and guys used to go over their head with their hands. Make them do that and get a feel for their body. I think that's maybe a little more important at these young ages than trying to do the mechanics stuff, because their mechanics are going to change as their body changes.
It was always interesting, and they talked about it during this World Series because the young man Savage was that splitter was just killing everybody. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Because they talked about it. If you maybe take a half step up in the box, you can cut off that drop a little bit more and see if you can put the ball in play and things of that nature. And it reminded me of something Pete Rose said. And he was talking about hitting. Pete would, and they were showing video of it, and Pete would move all around the box based on the pitcher and what he was doing, what he was trying to do to him. He was up, he was in, he was out, he was back, he was up, and it didn't matter where I wanted to adjust to what the pitcher was trying to do to me, and I thought, wow, we don't even consider that thought process anymore when we're talking about hitting. You plant yourself in that place, and that's what you do. Now, to be sure, I think, velocity is probably a bit different today than it was then. But now you see a guy like Savage coming in and throwing these splitters. The movement of baseball is, spin rate. All this stuff has become the new thing with baseball. And of course, velocity helps. But do you see that opportunity with kids, not being so staid in that situation?
I think the thing with Pete Rose is Pete Rose knew his swing so well. We have had some guys that actually, as they started to know their stuff a little better, actually took a little bit of a step back as hitters. It's really hard if they don't really know what they're doing. Sometimes the extra instruction makes them worse. So I do think that if you're talking about that 12 through 15-year-old, them being able to kind of have, like, they need to be able to discuss their hitting plan with you and what it is that they're trying to do before you start giving them too much instruction. Because everything just gets interpreted in so many different ways. If I tell you to stay back, man, what exactly staying back? My hands, my lower body, my chest, like there's so many different things that they need to be able to kind of have some of those discussions with you. And I do think that in youth baseball, we're a little bit overcoached on some of the mechanics. And like I said, I was guilty of that on the hitting side when my son was really young. Just because we know something doesn't mean we have to convey that to that kid. You need to talk a little bit above their current level. And so I think sometimes that simplicity and letting them kind of try to explain, like, yeah, I mean, the pitcher's ball keeps moving away from me, so I'm going to scoot up on the plate a little bit more. Like, theoretically, that makes a lot of sense, but do kids really get a chance to try that? Or have we kind of taught them, no, you're going to stand here, your hands are going to be here, and if you stay back well enough, you'll hit that pitch. Well, I don't know that necessarily helps. And so I do think that there is something to what you just said, and you listen to people like Pete Rose. I do think at the major league level that would be difficult. I don't know that you could just all of a sudden move up in the box on Savage and do anything because, as you said, now he's just going to throw it 98 right past you. So I don't know that that's going to be quite as good.
And exactly, I agree. But it's the thought process, and I think sometimes we get so stayed in our patterns that we, what is the process? Is it not allowing the process to be a continual movement throughout your career? And I think players that understand that are the ones that really have a lot of success at high level. And I think if you're giving these kids that thought process, again, there's the word, in their younger ages, it can be an understanding. You have to have the conversations. And I think this goes back to what coaching is. How do you relate to a 10-year-old? That is, what is it about you? How do you, one of the things that I started, and I believe this very much, and you're talking about things that we say that, I don't know if it really works, is 8U team. My son was we're 8U baseball team. I take a baseball because we just got out of the machine pitch and they have the softer balls, and whatnot. These are hard balls. Here you go. It was first year kid pitch. I said, here's a baseball. And I put it in everybody's hand. I said, feel that and pass it around to your buddies. Goes around, comes back to me. I said, is it hard? And they're like, yeah. I said, will it hurt if it hits you? And there was the question right there. Well, I've heard Dad say all the time, it won't hurt if it hits you. Like, let me explain, guys. It will hurt if it hits you. Okay? I said, that's why we wear a glove, so we can catch the baseball, so it doesn't hit us. That's the point. And so just taking those basic things to relate an understanding and not telling these kids, we say, I heard, it's, it won't hurt. Yes, it will. That's why they're crying. and they're looking in the stands for mom because it hurt. And I always thought that was something I just never wanted it to be. I don't want the kids to get hurt. I don't want them to have that. If you're in the batter's box, the ball's coming at you, we got to learn how to get out of the way. Will it hit you at times? Yes, you're probably going to get hit with the baseball at some point. But our goal here is to teach you how these things do so you don't get hit with the baseball. And just taking that, because you know as well as I do, this process starts with taking away the anxiety and the fear of being scared to do the things you need to do, because it's not a natural act to get in a box and have somebody throw a hard ball at you, or to stand on a mound and throw a baseball at somebody who's swinging a stick with the ball coming back at you. And I think just in that moment, that environment, starting in these places, that's a point of process that we have to take with these kids to bring them to a place that they trust us, that they're not fibbing to us, that they're telling us the truth, so that then you can open up that relatable construct to help them understand how to get better.
And one of the things you just said just a little bit ago was, how do you relate to that 10-year-old kid? And I guess that's the other thing. If I'm a youth parent, thinking about who I want coaching, okay? Sometimes we get so into credentials. Like,
right.
You could make an argument that the two best football coaches of all time are Nick Saban and Bill Belichick. Do you want them coaching your 9U football team? Like, would they be good at that? I don't know that they would be. And they're the greatest people of all time. So I hear people say, like, oh, we got to join this 10U team because, their coach used to be a D1 assistant. That doesn't mean they can coach 10-year-olds, right? Like, I'm a pretty good coach. I was not our best youth baseball coach when my kid was 9. We had a guy that did a really good job with 9 and 10-year-old baseball that I was not as good at. And I think that that's also something that we have to think about, is how is this coach helping my kid get better? And through that process, there's different metrics as you go through. The guy that's a really good 10U coach, and I know you've seen this before, a team is 12, they love their coach, they decide to stick it out for another 2 years, and by the time they're 14, everybody hates that coach. And it's nothing against that coach, it's just that he was really good in youth baseball, but now that the baseball is becoming a little more adult-like, he's not prepared to coach that level of baseball. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. But so we need to be thinking about those things as we go too. Just because somebody has great credentials doesn't mean they're the right coach for you right now in your development.
Yeah, I think that is a great assessment, because we've seen that happen. You see a great player in professional sports take on a managerial position or a coaching position, and stuff. And they're not that good. And you're like, oh, this guy should have been fantastic. He knows the game better than anybody, But it doesn't always translate into a quality coach. And you see this guy, this obscure guy that you never heard of, that was, played in minor leagues and whatnot. He's in the Hall of Fame now for coaching. Doesn't always work that way, but that's a lot of the times. He's, you look at a lot of guys that didn't quite get there, but they went into coaching and it clicked for them. They were able to take the things that I think that were relatable to them, and how they couldn't quite get over that hump. And here's the thing too, Scott, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. As a high school coach, right? And especially I think in today's culture, personally, high school coaches at your level, to me, are managing the personalities and making sure all the kids understand the plan, the construct of the team, how we're going to get where we want to go. And if you have quality assistants around you, those guys are there to help the kids get better as players, development, things like that. Because you have all these dynamics about these players. And you made mention, I got 50 kids, 20 of them may not like me.
Yeah.
I think that is a huge aspect that we don't consider. And you're not dealing with that at 10, 11, and probably even 12. But when you get to high school and these things, that's a whole different dynamic in and of itself, isn't it?
It 100% is. And being able to have real conversations where you also don't take away a kid's confidence. I know you have Tony Perkins on a lot. Tony Perkins has real conversations with the kids in his program frequently and is able to do it without taking that kid's confidence. That's a real art. And you have to be able to do that as a coach. And to your earlier point, you have to show them, this is the way I envision our team playing. This is how you fit into that. This is how you don't fit into that. If you want to be a bigger part, here's what you have to do. Not always are those conversations really well received, but there's nothing worse than that kid that gets to his senior year and he thinks he's going to get 110 at-bats, and the first 3 games go and he sits the bench the entire time. That stuff ruins your team. It ruins your team. That kid needs to have been having those conversations over the previous 12 to 18 months. And it doesn't matter as a coach, we aren't always reevaluating. Every year I have a senior or two that I had kind of told, hey, I don't see you playing much for us this year. And they always end up with a bigger role than expected. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can just put our head in the sand and say it'll all work out. You have to have those conversations, and that allows that kid to develop. And this baseball train ends at some point for every one of us. And the more honest you can be about where that person stands, I think the more that they'll respect you, and you're giving them a real chance. You're giving them a real chance to make decisions about their own career, about their own life, how much time they're spending on it, and what they need to do to get better. And I think that's important for them just as young men to develop.
Last thing I want to, one of the things we first met, this is the first time I had met you, encountered your program, was in 2021 at the Misha Class 5 State Championships, which I believe you guys won, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Because Fort Zumwalt East was there, Fort Zumwalt South, and Rockwood Summit, I think.
Yeah, East was the next year. I think it was Zumwalt South, Rockwood Summit. I think it was Platte County.
That's right.
No, Grain Valley. My fault. Platte County won it the next year. Grain Valley. Yeah,
yes.
That year. Yeah.
Yes. So we're there, and I'm watching, and in the stands, when you guys came to play, were all these kids wearing the Willard Tigers uniforms. They had their jerseys on. They're engaged. They know the players, because I started talking to them. I still got video from these kids in the stands because I love chatting it up with the youth players. Like, I think it's so much fun. And they're like, yeah, I know that. He's really good. I want to play. And I'm like, so you guys going to be out here when you get, pumped up. Yeah. And those kids are there, and not just there, but they are watching the baseball game. They were cheering at the right times. So you knew they were watching. It wasn't just, spontaneous. And there were some, they would mess around, of course, get the snow cone and it's baseball, having fun. We're having a good time, chewing bubble gum, giving it to our buddy in the ribs, all that kind of stuff. But I'm watching these kids and I'm watching that. And to me, understanding that you're getting those kids into that and watching what high school baseball is, I don't think we do enough of that. And that is something I've charged a lot to youth baseball. Do you even know who your high school coach is? Do you know what the program's about? Have you went and watched a high school baseball game? And 9 times out of 10, I get no. And I think that is something we're severely missing.
100%. This goes back about 10 years, but I had a player that did not play in our youth program that was an 8th grader, good player, really good player. And his youth baseball coach said, hey, I think you'll be the starting shortstop at your high school as a freshman. And so we start high school baseball workouts fall of his freshman year. And he tells me this, and I'm like, you realize our best player was, unanimous first team all conference as a junior last year was our shortstop. He'll now be a senior. He's going to be our shortstop. And you talk to the kid, he had no idea who the older kid was. His youth baseball coach didn't know who this kid was. The kid's immediately kind of like heartbroken and down because in his head, he's going to be the starting shortstop. He's been told this by someone he really respects. And I think it's really damaging kids when we do stuff like that. One of the things I try to encourage our players to do, pick a college baseball team or two and try to follow them throughout the season, because it gives you something that next level to follow. And like, I'm a big Auburn baseball fan. We don't have a kid who can play at Auburn, but I know some of our kids follow Auburn, and they watch the program. They know the kids on that team. If I'm a fifth or sixth grader, I'm wanting to pick a high school program in my area that I like and try to get my kid to go to 2 or 3 of those games each year. I think it really helps them see what the future is. I think that stuff is really important. Sorry, my battery's running low there on my computer. And so I think that's really important for you to kind of show them what that vision is. We are lucky. We're in a one-school town, and our town is small, so we get that opportunity a bunch. Like, a lot of our players know our third and fourth graders and vice versa. But if you're in St. Louis, there's 8 to 10 to 12 really good programs there. You live next to one of them. Like, St. Louis isn't so spread out that they're 20 miles away. So find one of those and follow that program a little bit, and I think it's going to make you and your kid understand the process better as you go forward. We're fortunate in the way we have it, but I do think that we've worked hard at that part of it as well.
Heck, you can just go right down 270 from UMSL to Mobap to Maryville and watch 3 really good baseball programs right there within about, 10 miles of each other. It's amazing. It really, you're
It
right.
absolutely is.
You're right.
So if you're a freshman playing for Tony Perkins and you're on the JV team, man, I'd go watch Maryville as much as I could. UMSL, that program's really improved in the last few years. Like, go watch some of that, and it will really help you kind of see your future and say, like, can I actually play at this school? I don't know if I can, but now I get to see what it looks like every day.
What does Division I baseball look like? I mean, it's right over there at Lindenwood University. It's 10 miles from us right here. We're in St. Charles. They're in St. Charles. It's just right across the highway, the interstate. Yeah. I mean, you can go look and find out. With ESPN Plus, you can watch them on the road. I mean, like, there's so many ways you can follow that, and I think that's really beneficial for kids. So if I'm a 5th, 6th, 7th grader, I'm watching a varsity team. If I'm an 8th, 9th, 10th grader, I'm picking some college teams to watch. I think that stuff really matters. Absolutely. Trivia question of the day: what was the original name of the St. Louis Cardinals? We got it for you. Here's a choice. I'll give you. There's 4 choices: the Perfectos, Brown Stockings, Brewers, or Red Hats.
I don't think it'd be the Brown Stockings, because I think that went to Baltimore. I'm going to go with the Perfectos.
That's a good guess. That's what I guessed at first, and we were both incorrect, Coach.
Okay.
It was the Brown Stockings.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
And because I did not know that myself, but there it is. That was the original name of the St. Louis Cardinals. So all you trivia folks out there, hope that was fun. I like to do that. I love baseball trivia. It's a lot of fun. Coach, I love it. Appreciate you dropping the knowledge.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. We probably won't see it. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. Enjoy, whatever you do on Thanksgiving, if you're eating turkey or hunting or whatever you're doing. So, folks, appreciate it. Again, if you like what we're doing, hit that subscribe, hit the like button, share it out with your friends. We do appreciate it. Also, our legacy membership out there right now, 50% off for our first 100 members. Get in the YBM Club. We've got some great stuff. We're going to be, we will have Coach McGee helping us with this. We're working on our culture corner and talking about dad coaching and things of this nature. That's going to be part of our YBM Club. So please support what we're doing. We appreciate it very much. Everybody, have a great day in the Lord. Happy Thanksgiving. And got advice for pitchers, Coach?
Throw strikes.
There you go. All you hitters, hit them where they ain't. We'll see you all next time.